Now, that doesn't mean every financial services company is like that. I mean, I think there are plenty of large and small firms who put enough guardrails in place, but then you're trying to litigate honesty with policy versus capability. Honesty is not a character trait, it's a muscle.
Welcome to Ultrahabits. Here, we go under the hood with our guests to unpack the minutia and to understand what processes and systems they engage or research that result in ultra-enhanced living.
Howdy, folks. It is RJ Singh here at Ultrahabits, and we are super stoked to bring you our next guest this week, one of my favorite contributors to the Harvard Business Review, Ron Carucci. Now, Ron has a 30-year track record helping executives tackle massive challenges within their strategy, organization, and leadership. We're talking about startups to Fortune 10s, non-for-profits, and heads of states, turnarounds to new markets, and effectively overhauling leadership and culture to redesign for growth. Now, Ron has authored 8 books, including his most recent, To Be Honest, Lead with the Power of Truth, Justice, and Purpose. And that's what we focus on in this conversation. It's all about why leaders within organizations need to be transparent, lead with honesty and truth, and basically keep it real. Now, Ron is a proud member of the Marshall Goldsmith MG100 Coaches community. His work has been featured in Fortune CEO Magazine Incorporated, Business Insider, MSNBC, Business Week, and Smart Business. I really know you're going to enjoy this conversation. Ron is a true thought leader. Super happy to have him on the show. Please listen. Let us know what you think. Reviews. If you haven't yet, go to www.ultrahabits.co and sign up for the weekly newsletter. There's a bunch of cool stuff in there. Anyways, y'all, I'm going to leave you guys in the capable hands of Ron. Enjoy the conversation. Peace. All right, Ron, welcome to the Ultrahabits show. It is 7 a.m. here in the land down under, Melbourne, Australia. Where are you coming from, Ron? Where do you hail from?
Hi, RJ. Nice to be with you today. I am actually coming from just outside New York City in suburban Connecticut.
There you go. So, Ron, I've actually read multiple articles of yours in the Harvard Business Review. Been a fan for a very long time. So it's really great to have you on the show. I really resonate with a lot of your content, a lot of your literature around organizations and organizational design and behavior. So again, it's really great to have you on the show. But before we jump into the content, I wanted to ask you about something that I read about you and your antique doorknobs and keys and your kind of tick around having a different mug every morning that you use, that you kind of select from your conference room. Could you tell our audience a little bit more about what this is all about?
Yeah. So I've just moved into a new home, and I haven't moved into my new office yet, but otherwise you would be able to see them behind me. But I have these 3 large jars that are filled with antique skeleton keys and doorknobs from all different eras and all different kinds of places in history, door knockers. And I used to make them as sort of sculpture installation arts as gifts for people who I thought were incredible door openers, people who could understand that our job here on the earth is to open doors for others and to make a way for them. And then I decided I wanted to make some for myself because I think they're a wonderful reminder to me that, if I think about some of these doorknobs that are hundreds of years old, how many hands have passed through the thresholds of those doors, and how many stories have gone through those doorways, and how many doors have been opened for other people and for me. And a reminder that I'm part of a bigger story. And my job is to open doors for others so they can find a bigger story for themselves. So that's the doorknob story. In my conference room where we make our coffee, I have mugs from all over the world that I've collected from vacations and trips and events I spoke at. And when I begin my day with my coffee and taking my vitamins and all that good morning ritual stuff, when I pick one, it's great for me to sort of pick somebody to bring to mind, to be grateful for. People who have imprinted my life in really important ways. People that I love and care about, my kids, my family, my siblings, special clients, people that I've met, thought leaders that I admire. But it helps center my day around, A, I'm not the only thing in the story. And B, there are so many people in my own cloud of witnesses that I have to be grateful for. And so I start my day by thinking about one of them and drinking my coffee that way.
I think I really love that. So I'm obviously a habits person, and part of habits can be looked at as rituals. And I'm a non-active Freemason, and within Masonry, there's a lot of rituals, allegory. I think having physical cues to help remind you and recalibrate is very effective, because what happens is, in the flow of life, we can get lost in the content. And I like the way that what you've done is very early in the morning, you've reset yourself by a physical reminder. And I really appreciate that structure. That's kind of why I wanted you to unpack that story for us a little bit. So what we're going to do now is we'll jump into your newest piece of work. You're a multiple time author, as we know, and you've recently written a book called To Be Honest, Lead with the Power of Truth, Justice, and Purpose. So why this book now?
Well, I think for such a time as this, right, RJ, I mean, we don't have to look around too far to see how hungry the world is for leaders it can trust, for organizations it can believe in, for people who act in ways we want to emulate. We are barraged with stories on a regular basis of leaders who behave corruptly, behave selfishly, behave immorally, with organizations that, overextended on their greed to a place of harm. And I think we're disheartened. I think the world is starved for something better. And I think we can do better. And I wanted to know, under what conditions people behave fairly, tell the truth, and serve a greater good? And under what conditions they lie, cheat, and serve their own interests first? And I want to know, could we predict it? And if we could predict it, could we prevent it, or could we proliferate it if it's good? So we did a 15-year longitudinal study of more than 3,200 leaders to see if we could detect those patterns, to see if we could isolate when and where they made the choices they did. And it was extremely exciting. We used some really cool IBM Watson artificial intelligence technology to help us do the analytics and the stat models. And we did indeed find 4 predictable conditions hiding in plain sight in organizations that arbitrate which way people will choose, or at least strongly influence which way people will choose. I think that we need to change the conversation on honesty. The book certainly broadens the definition of honesty, because what we found in the data was it's no longer enough not to lie, or not to be considered a liar, to be considered honest. Today, truth, justice, and purpose are now the integrated definition of honesty, meaning you have to say the right thing, do the right thing, and say and do the right thing for the right reason. The wonderful thing about writing the book was that it's a book of heroes. I didn't want to know any more about the Theranos story or the Wells Fargo stories or the Volkswagen stories. We're all tired of those. I wanted to know, who are the heroes I could be proud to know? Who are the organizations that were doing things that I want to emulate, that I'd be proud to follow? And so I assembled an extraordinary set of folks that I got to spend a year talking with. And the book is really a curation of their stories.
Can you share some of these stories? Because you're quite right. I think we live in an era of doom and gloom and sensationalization, and the good it tends to be lost through the bad. What were some of these stories, and can you unpack them a little bit for us?
Oh gosh, there was so many. Hubert Joly, the CEO of Best Buy, went in, and him and his new book on the heart of business are out now, telling his story. But he was one of the earlier interviews I did, and he's also a good friend. And he simply wanted to turn the narrative of retail electronics, which was a dying business, or a difficult business because of online retailers, to a different place, and invited thousands of employees to think about, when are we at our best? How do we want to live our purpose? How do we make this a platform for your purpose? And reignited an incredible revolution at that company to an amazing place, and inspired thousands of people to serve customers, to see customers, to think about their role in the world in a very different way.
In your research, would you say that when we're looking at employees and alignment to the objectives of a firm, are they in the firms that have been successful in getting employees to align with their firm's objectives? Is it a case of the employees sacrificing their self-interest, or has the firm done a good job at aligning the objectives with the staff's or the employee's self-interest?
If a firm has articulated a genuine and believable purpose, a reason why we're here, a reason why we serve, the greater good we want to have in the world, that certainly provides them a platform from which to then cascade their objectives and set their goals and metrics. Too often, those purposes are purpose washing, meaning they're just the intent to create the appearance of being purpose driven, while your real goal is to just make more money. I think the organizations that do this well are the ones that first begin by asking people, why are you here? What's the fingerprint you want to leave? Satya Nadella, when he took the helm at Microsoft, began by asking his senior team, Microsoft works for you. How is Microsoft a platform for you to have your impact in the world? How is Microsoft a way for you to leave your indelible imprint and unique imprint on the world around you? And so I think, like Hubert Joly did at Best Buy, I think we need to invite people to shape our purpose with their purpose, so that people can look at the bigger story and say, I see myself in that story. I feel part of that story. It's a story I want to contribute to, versus that's a nice slogan, or why are we doing that for? Or, interesting words, but that's not how you actually do things around here. And so I think, all of our organizations have statements of promises. That we have values, we have mission statements, we have vision statements, we have purpose statements. What most organizations fail to realize is that those are promises. They're not just marketing campaigns. Whether you intended them to be or not, or whether you understood or not that you are making a promise, those promises are being calibrated by your employees, by your customers, by your suppliers, to see whether or not you keep them. Do your actions and words match? Do the words on the poster or on the lobby wall look like how you do business? Look how you lead, like how you can communicate, like how you spend your money. And one of the factors we found in the research was that if those actions and words are aligned, meaning the purpose you say you serve, the reason you say you are here, and the way you live your life, you're 3 times more likely to have people tell the truth and behave fairly and serve a greater good. But if the actions don't align, if they're lip service only, if they're words only, you've institutionalized duplicity. You've said to people, around here, we say one thing and do another, as evidenced by these words. What you've then done is give everybody permission to follow suit. So around here, it's okay to say one thing and do another. And when you've done that, now, statistically, you've now increased your odds by a factor of 3 that people will lie, cheat, and serve their own interests first, because you've told them it's okay to do that.
So would you say that firms that have categorically failed in the ethical space, and we know a lot of them, right? Would you say that the firm was not made up of bad people? You would then surmise that the firm failed their articulation to the people around purpose and how we conduct ourselves. Like, I guess what I'm trying to ask you is, do you feel that people in these firms that have categorically failed through corruption would have been very different had the leadership been able to articulate the values and pursue this thread of honesty?
I don't know that I'd say it's that simplistic, RJ. To simply, if you say it, then you are it. I do think that the more common failures than the categorical collapse of an Enron or a WorldCom. I think the far more common failures are far more insidious and small. I think what we learned from the research is that articulating your purpose is of no use at all. It's people. We found plenty of companies that people understood the purpose just fine. They just didn't believe it. So you only actually are believed when you activate your purpose, when it actually comes to life, and people are modeling it, living it, and expecting others to live it. And that's just one of, we've found 4 factors in our research that, sort of separate the sheep from the wolves. A clear sense of identity, being who you say you are, was just one of them.
Let's unpack those 4 factors. What are the other factors, Ron?
The second one was accountability. Was how much justice and how much dignity is there in how you talk about people's contributions. You never hear anybody say, I am so excited for my performance review today. You hear them dread it. They lose sleep. They are anxious. They feel disappointed. They feel like the system is rigged. The system that should be the most honoring and inspiring in our organizations has become the most demeaning and demoralizing, because the way we treat people's contributions is undignifying and unfair. We built these systems, decades ago, when people's remits were the same. When people had, how many claims you filed, how many T-shirts you printed, how many boxes you packed. Well, today you have a workforce of people whose remit is as unique as they are. Their ideas, their analysis, their creativity, their solutions, their radical ideas. And so when you treat sameness as if it's fairness, that's when you make it unfair. When you don't treat the contribution as if it's a reflection of the contributor, you don't treat it with dignity. Today, we have to insert or reinsert dignity and fairness. We have to believe when we show up at work that I have as much of a chance of success as anybody else. That, in a tech company, the engineers aren't the most privileged. In a marketing company, the branders aren't the most privileged. In a growth company, the salespeople are the most privileged. Because if those privileges are there, getting in the way of my ability to succeed, then I don't believe the system is stacked in my favor. So when accountability systems are seen as just and dignifying, you're 4 times more likely to have people be honest. Transparency and decision-making was the third. So if I walk into a room, into a meeting, and I believe that what's happening around the table is an honest exchange of information, the data has not been scrubbed or tainted or tilted in some direction to engineer a certain reaction, that my voice is welcome, that my counterpoint of view, my dissenting idea is safe to express. That's transparency and governance. Now you're 3.5 times more likely to have people be honest. But if I walk into that room and I think it's orchestrated theater, that it's just, you have an agenda, you're spinning the data to get me to think a certain way, you've left part of the data out, and the last thing you want is my disconfirming point of view. Now we have no transparency and governance at all. So now you're 3.5 times more likely to have people being dishonest. And lastly, cross-functional seams, the border wars that we typically have in organizations, the classic sales and marketing, supply chain operations, marketing and R&D. If at those intersections where the most competitive value of your company gets created, if there's a healthy way to resolve conflict, if there's a sense of we-ness, meaning we're all part of a bigger story, together we create value for a greater good. There's a way to resolve the healthy tensions that naturally show up at those seams. Now you are 6 times more likely to have people be honest, because now you have coalesced your organization into a shared truth. But if you have fragments, if you have the classic silos, if you have border wars that remain unresolved, if people see them as a they, here they come, here's what they want, and you have we's and they's in rivalries at those borders, now when you fragment the organization like that, you then fragment the truth. So it's no longer the ability to find a shared truth. It's now my truth versus your truth, and my only intent is to win. Now you're 6 times more likely to have people be dishonest. And the interesting thing about the statistical models, RJ, is that they're cumulative. So if you're good at all 4 of those things, if you really can learn to have reasonable mastery in those, you're 16 times more likely to have people say the right thing, do the right thing, and say and do the right thing for the right reason. But if you suck at all 4 of them, Now you're 16 times more likely to put yourself into a headline story you never wanted to be in.
So I'm going to unpack this a little bit. A theme that came out of the first season with people from all types of backgrounds, corporate, military, athletics, something that was quite surprising. And I reflected on it later and realized how important it was for me in my corporate journey and success, was this concept and reoccurring theme of psychological safety. Because for me, what you're talking about is organizations where people feel that they can bring who they really are to the organization. What would your feedback or what would your view be on psychological safety and the companies that you spoke to that were successful in these 4 categories that you've just mentioned?
So in each of those statistics I gave you, 3, 4, 3.5, 6, 1.03 of each of them is the dimension of psychological safety. So anywhere from 20 to 40% of those factors is based on whether or not people felt like it was safe to share their own, tell the truth, whether it was okay for them to show up with their own voice, whether they felt welcomed to do so, that their dissenting voice was received by a welcoming mind and heart. So it's a vital factor. Amy Edmondson was one of the people I interviewed for the book. So her voice is, she's sort of one of the original thought creators of psychological safety 20 years ago. And even she would say it's not a silver bullet, right? It won't solve all ills of a culture, but it certainly lays an important foundation. And so, even if you reduce the 1.03 from each of those factors, you still have a high risk factor of dishonesty in any one of those behaviors. And all those conditions are conditions that are hiding in plain sight. How often do you see people roll their eyes when someone references their values or mission? Or, feel angry when they get categorized by, I had one client who I've been coaching for a while, and we met after his performance review, and his open, I knew it was right after it was done that we were going to be meeting, and he came on the screen. It was a virtual call, and his veins were coming out of his neck. And he gave me a 3, and I'm always a 4. I'm always a top rating. My last couple of days were 5, but HR said there's a quota now, so I can only get a 3. What the hell? Who got the 4? And yet we know from brain science, from neuroscience, that our brains are triggered when we get categorized. Categorical thinking makes us, feel threatened. His amygdala was in hijack because he got a 3. Not those dignifying experience. Because I read the form. I read the words. I wanted to see what was going on. They were balanced feedback. It was fair developmental feedback. There was nothing wrong with it. He was still on track to be the successor for a big job that we were working him towards. Nothing had changed, but a number sent him over the edge. So, we have these systems that deconstruct psychological safety simply by their device of putting people in boxes. So I think it's, to long way to answer your question, RJ, it's a critical, vital, important part of creating cultures of honesty.
Would you say certain sectors, like what if I'm running a financial firm, Ron, Wall Street, you know where I'm going with this, right? I'm like, look, we're results driven, we're type A, we're all about making money, and we're doing that. Why do I need to embrace this philosophy, Ron? And it's a bit kind of too mushy and warm and fuzzy. What's your feedback to that? What would you say to that?
I'd say good luck with your career. Many people have thought that, right? The problem with slippery slopes is that they're all engraved with the words, at least I'm not as bad as. Mm-hmm. And so, most people on Wall Street today would say, we're not greedy like, those firms that are no longer here anymore. We would never do what they did in 2008. That's a level of denial that's very dangerous. Greed as a force is compelling. And, when it's unmitigated, when you have no reference point for people to act in other ways besides rampant, unfettered acquisition of more, you're inviting people to consider compromise. Now, that doesn't mean every financial services company is like that. I mean, I think there are plenty of large and small firms who put enough guardrails in place, but then you're trying to litigate honesty with policy versus capability. Honesty is not a character trait; it's a muscle. It is something you have to be good at, and you can regulate it to some degree. But if you don't institutionalize it as a capability and only regulate it as a policy, you're asking for risk.
Yeah, sometimes I think, and I was a bit young, but I do remember my big brother watching the movie Wall Street and Gordon Gekko's speech on greed. Sometimes I wonder how much that impacted wannabe stockbrokers and how that played out in 2008 and around that time. And I do agree with you. I do wholeheartedly agree that honesty, like any other virtue, is an action. It's a muscle. It's not something we need to feel. And that's a whole philosophical piece. What would you say to an organization like my company is, we've got 35 people and I'm on the leadership team, and we are incorporating values like what you're talking about into the DNA and how we operate, but it's easy because we have a small firm. What happens and what would you say and what needs to be done when an exec is looking at his company and he's like, oh my God, there's institutional dishonesty? Where do you even start, man? Like what's the process?
So I think you can, I don't think you have to do a wholesale overhaul of your company. You have to preserve what's good, but I think simply start by we have an assessment tool for those 4 factors. Start looking, where are you not living up to your words? Where is it okay for duplicity to take the place of integrity? How are your accountability systems? How do people feel treated? When in your QBRs, when you're reviewing the last quarter's performance, how many people are thinking, while they're watching somebody's presentation, this is such crap, but saying nothing? When this is the fourth quarter in a row you forecast something we know damn well you're never going to meet. Who is your they? Who are the people that when you hear them coming, or you have to work with them, or they need something from you, you think, oh God, here's they coming in. Why are they? And by the way, who's they are you? Who's pain in the ass are you when someone needs something from you? So you can start. All honesty is local, right? You just start constructing the way to reach levels of honesty you're not there. Here's the great news about the models we built. It's not all or nothing, right? What we found is, for example, a 20% improvement in alignment between your actions and words and your identity will lead to a 12% improvement in honesty, right? So you don't have to sort of go to perfect in all 4 of these dimensions. You can continue to make strides. What you have to do is commit to a long-term, effort of growth, right? You don't say, I'm going to get in shape today, and then go to the gym and say, I'm going to bench press 400 pounds. That's not how it works, right? So you have to work your honesty muscle on a daily basis, so that you're ready for the crisis, not if it hits, but when it hits. But just begin the process of committing and ruthlessly interrogating the places in your system where there are contradictions, where there are places where you say you value inclusion, but your promotion processes say something else. You say you value community, but your none of your work is collaborative. You say, so look at the places and listen to people when they tell you that things are not quite adding up. Pay attention to it. It may make perfect sense in your head, but if it's not living in the lived experience of those you lead, then pay attention.
Yeah, I love this, Ron. It's like you're bringing stoicism into the workplace. I'm an existentialist, so I'm all about not how we feel or think, about how we operate, and how we operate then changes the way we feel and think. And I think that's what you're talking about. And I suppose what I'd like to know is our final question is, the firms that you worked with that were very good at this honesty piece, how did they habituate it into the culture of the organization?
Daily. So one of the stories in the book is the Guidance Corporation, a CEO by the name of Ginger Graham. She got every one of her executive team members a coach, but not a professional coach like me. She went down in the organization to the middle level of the company, pulled out 10 of them, assigned them cross-functionally to her leaders, and every month they went and gathered feedback and gave it to their assigned coachee. It began as anonymous, but eventually it turned to real data. She made everyone on her senior team give each other feedback. She ritualized storytelling as they grew and aggressively added people to the business. They ritualized storytelling to make sure that new members understood the stories of honesty and integrity. She put people on hot seats. In town halls, it became okay to say, we missed this goal. Let's talk about why. So there are lots of ways in your systems and processes you can raise up the voices and raise up the ideas and raise up the truths that aren't being told, and put them into the hallways, put them into the room. Look for the places where look for your own behavior. Where are you rolling your eyes? Where are you getting curt? Where are you inadvertently expelling voices from the room that you don't want to hear?
Well put, Ron. Very well put. Where can we learn more about your work? Where can we find the book? Tell us, where do we find you?
So come to our website, Navalent, Navalent.com, where you'll find a treasure trove of white papers and blogs and videos and several really important free ebooks on transformational change and virtual workplaces and organization design. You just hang out with us because you'll learn a ton about leadership and teams. If you want to learn more about the book, we have our own website for that. It's called tobehonest.net. And you'll find we did a whole TV series, so you can binge watch all 15 episodes of Moments of Truth, where you'll get to see the behind the scenes interviews with the heroes from the book that I spoke with. There's a free webinar on there about the research. We have an assessment tool you can download called How Honest Is My Team? And take it and assess yourself and get scored on whether or not you get the whole scoop from your team or not. You'll also find a bunch of HBR and Forbes articles and podcast interviews like this one that I've done about the book. So if you want to learn more about the honesty stuff, you can find us there. Please follow me on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you so much for your time, Ron. Thanks for sharing your truth and having such an honest conversation with me. Really enjoyed it.
RJ, a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.